All the pigs you don't use, just put them in the tent, so you don't lose them. Should be rope in there, obviously.
Walgett, northwest New South Wales. Isaac Gordon is a pastor, a former prison guard and a family man. Today, he and his brother Bert are setting up camp with kids from nearby schools. This trip, carried out with off-duty police officers, is a blueprint for his dream project to help local kids deal with the issues he says are prime causes of Australia's Aboriginal incarceration crisis.
I've had this idea for a long, long time to get a healing centre for our youth. And hopefully down the track we will. And you fellas have a big part of that. And I believe the river is a place for healing.
As an elder, he wants young people to stay connected to Indigenous culture and country, stay healthy and get off the grid. None of these kids have fallen foul of the law, but there are many young people in his community who have. He's got his sights set on helping young offenders.
What happens? They go to jail, they come out and go back to the same place they lived, and they go back to the same rot they put them in there. They go to jail, they come out of jail, they do the same thing, they go back to jail, and it's continual.
As these young people enjoy some time on the river, Isaac, who's also a police Aboriginal community officer, says rural Indigenous communities like his are in dire need of help. It's not just imprisonment. The rate of suicide amongst Australia's First Peoples is twice that of other Australians.
Sex abuse or drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever, mental abuse, if they're grieving, they go to the healing centre and they try to heal them. I've seen the family breakdown. I've seen drugs greater and worse drugs than ever before. I've seen mental illness greater than I've ever seen it before. So they turn to drug, they turn to drink to try and get that peace or healing, but only lasts for a little while. And then they're in the gutter. Mate, it breaks your heart, to see our young fellas locked up. The jail are full of young youth, Indigenous youth.
Despite decades of lip service and royal commissions, the full extent of Australia's incarceration of its First Peoples is extraordinary. Aboriginal people make up around 2.5% of Australia's population, but they take up over a quarter of the beds in jail. For juveniles, the figure's almost 40%. Australia also fares miserably when compared to other countries' First Nation imprisonment rates. US figures are hard to come by, but while Canada incarcerates its First Peoples at around 10 times the rate of non-Aboriginals, Australia fares even worse. It locks up Indigenous people at a rate 15 times that of other Australians.
We've always been subjected to almost a brutal form of justice, whether it's whitefellas landing and taking over the country or the treatment of our people as colonisers started to settle different parts of the country, or our mob being rounded up and put on missions around the place. So I don't think you can ever characterise our relationship with the justice system as one of benefit to us.
The biggest town in this part of New South Wales is Dubbo. 10% of the population is Aboriginal, a much higher figure than in Australia's big cities. On the public housing fringes, young people like those Isaac wants to help tackle poverty, drugs and mental health issues. Dying young or getting locked up is frequently the result.
First one I got locked up for is a snatch and run. Did up in the mall on an old lady. And the second one got caught for breaking into cars. And the fourth one was up breaking in us. Fingerprinted. Got an armed robbery charge, but got dropped down to goods in custody. Aggravated breaking in us. And I forgot what the other one was.
Boney, as he's known, is a textbook case of how familiar jail has become to some sections of the community. Inside, he's got family from all over.
And you met all my cousins from Bree and all that in there. Met a couple people from Wakenya, Burke, Sydney, Griffith, Wagga, Grafton and all that, Tamworth.
As a child, he was shuttled around. His own dad served time too, and Lawrence Boney has paid the price for crimes both major and minor. His last sentence was picked up by a national newspaper. The headlines depicted a justice system with one rule for white defendants, another for black. Remarkably, as a juvenile, he was sentenced to a year in prison for being stopped with cannabis twice. Its total street value? $30. It was reduced on appeal, but it wasn't an isolated case. Another Indigenous boy rantier received a year in jail for stealing hamburger buns, also reduced on appeal. Between 2007 and mid-2012, 245 Aboriginal youths were sentenced to jail in this part of New South Wales. The number of non-Aboriginal youths who received jail time was 12. Indigenous youths are more likely to be proceeded against by police, more likely to be found guilty, and more likely to get a prison term. And in some communities, prison has become an everyday part of life.
They've quite often got family within the particular facility. They know they're going to get fed 3 times a day. They know they've got a safe bed to put their head down every night. Some of these children, and I was talking to somebody from within the system this morning who was saying, when they go back to jail, am I getting my old room back?
In remote towns in New South Wales, detention is sometimes the judge's only option. A lack of resources means defendants can't be ordered to perform community service as an alternative. While local police do attempt community outreach programs, they're often accused of over-policing Aboriginal communities, but they say they're overburdened.
We're sick of trying to bash our head against the wall and saying, well, we can arrest them, we can have them locked up, we can try and do whatever we can to try and solve that one particular crime, but how are we going to change that whole cycle? And sadly, we're being able to predict that some of the families that we've been dealing with now for generations, we're probably looking at 3, 4 or possibly 5 generations of some families that are producing children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that ultimately grow up in exactly the same way as their uncles, brothers, cousins, etc. and merge into this life of criminal offending behaviour because that's all they know.
On a personal level, even top cops are questioning the effectiveness of jail as a long-term solution.
A deterrent factor, I'm certainly not convinced is a deterrent. What it does do, however, is it stops that child committing crime.
Yarragu then decided that he'd cut all the pieces of the fish up and throw them in what was the river then, the Barwon River, that the cod made. And he gave a name to all those pieces of fish once they were thrown into the river. So all the water creatures got a name. So for example, there was Dungay, which is yellowbelly, Gagay, which is the catfish.
For Isaac, the erosion of Aboriginal cultural knowledge, suppressed and undervalued for 2 centuries, has young people lost.
I hope down the track our young youth will understand who they really are, where they come from, where their land, where their boundaries of their tribe, of their nation, and get to grab hold of that. Say, well, I'm a Nimba person, or I'm a Barkindji person, and be proud of that. That they lost a lot, and I always said that we had a stolen generation, but now we've got a lost generation. If you lose your identity, you lost everything, eh? If you don't know where you come from, if you don't know who your people are, and if you don't know your culture, well, you lost your way, and you've got no identity. So who are you? Who are you if you've got no identity? You're a nobody.
I reckon we should tell them ghost stories so they'll go to sleep early.
I love my people, you know, I love my youth, the youth. I love trying to help them. And that's a lot to do with my faith, you know, to care for them and to love them and try and find help for them if I can, you know. That's one of the reasons I'm fighting for the healing centre, mate.
It's Sunday before Isaac's evening church service. Reggie Carroll has dropped by to see him and his wife Eileen. He's on weekend release from jail. Once his centre gets going, Isaac says Reggie's tales of crime and reform need to be heard by young people. The families are close. The Gordons helped raise Reggie's kids when he and their mother weren't around.
He's always there to lend a hand. You know, when you was down, he'd be there, you know. Give you a shoulder to cry on. I was about 22, like when I first went to jail now, and I'm 41 now. So, like, and I've virtually done stints nearly every year. Like, probably my best breaks were like 2-3 years. There's a dive out of this tree here.
Reggie's most recent sentence was for a serious assault on his own partner.
I was one that bottled a lot of stuff up until I exploded. Nearly killed my girlfriend. It shattered me. Yeah. It affected me in a lot of ways. And I could have been looking at a murder charge, you know. Waking up in a cell, not knowing what I'd done the next morning, you know. My head just started spinning. I didn't know what to think, where to think. The kids were going through my mind. The boys were younger then, my eldest fellow was 17.
Reggie says he's often worried what effects his actions could have on his children. But he also knows what it means to have a troubled childhood. His own upbringing was fraught with a trauma well known to many Indigenous families. His grandmother was part of the stolen generation, the widespread government removal of Aboriginal and mixed-race kids from their parents, right up to the 1970s. His other disabled grandmother took her own life in the most terrible of ways.
She wheeled herself away from the cottage and doused herself with kerosene and lit herself alight. And that's one thing, I suppose, my old father, you know, he lived with, like, and I suppose it was hard to deal with the grief, you know, like he'd punch my old mum, and times he'd take it out on me and my brothers.
In a week's time, Reggie will be let out altogether. As he catches up with friends and neighbours, he's reflecting on the fact that one of his own sons has even served prison time alongside him.
I worry about him a lot because I know that going through all my, you know, depression, all the domestic violence, I've felt worthless. I felt weak, you know, and I was a lost man, sort of, and they seen me as they were growing, you know. That's when I, you know, they seen me the way I was, you know, like committing all me, you know, assaults and domestic violence and stuff like that, the same way I did. But why I want to give the grog and the drugs and the cigarettes, everything away, and because I know in my heart I can deal with it better.
faith we can see beautiful.
At church that night, Isaac's family make up most of those in attendance.
Hallelujah. Good to see you, brother. Couldn't get your mate though, mate. I texted him. Any more favourites? What about without him? I could do nothing, you know?
Without him.
Yeah, I had a few more last week, but football only takes them away. Football, they get on a few beers and they don't turn up, you know. But one lost sheep, brother, that's all we're looking for. One lost sheep, you know, and that's all that matters, you know.
Duralambone, outback New South Wales. As a pastor, Isaac is often called in people's greatest hour of need. A few months earlier, it was Stanley Lord he was comforting. Today, Stanley's receiving a visit from the Aboriginal Legal Service. There are some loose ends to tie up after tragedy struck the family.
It was the 19th of January there, and we buried him the day before his birthday, 1st of February.
Stanley Jr. died in jail almost 700 kilometres away in Sydney. His dad doesn't know why. He was jailed for driving without a licence.
Yeah, it's all his stuff. I still got all his stuff in the room what he was going to move into. I don't want to talk about it. A lot of them get sent to jail for no reason. Well, probably reason, but you know, it's not worth going to jail for. Like my son, he went to jail for driving with no licence. They say they give him 3 years, but they give him more than that. It's life. He's not coming back.
In this part of New South Wales, the Aboriginal Legal Service says almost half of its clients convicted of driving while disqualified were jailed. That's a higher imprisonment rate than aggravated indecent assault or possessing child pornography. It's a crime and a punishment which overwhelmingly affects Indigenous people in remote areas.
Visited him in the hospital before he passed. He kept saying he was sorry. I think he knew what was going to happen.
Stanley Sr. now awaits the results of a coronial inquest.
See, the place I'm talking about that we own, straight down there, about maybe 20 k's down, I suppose, might be 20 k's. Down that road. And then we've got school just up here, about 5 k's.
6 months later, and there's a glimmer of hope for Isaac's plans. He's been invited to see the facilities at a boarding college near the town of Brewarrina. Red tape has seen it closed for the meantime. The buildings sit unused.
So that looks like a proper footy oven, mate.
Yeah. It's not quite full length, but it's close.
Close, yeah.
Yeah.
So how's that come up and it's watered? Nice.
Oh, it's nice.
Eh?
Better than the one in town.
Fair dinkum.
Yeah.
Science lab?
Science lab. And in the end of the science lab was the library. They've got a heap of books there that they were starting to get sorted out.
Organic eggs, right?
Yes. Organic eggs, that's it. Yes.
But this is unreal, this place.
The school is near the Gordon family's ancestral land, where Isaac's brother lives. If he can get the money together to accommodate kids on their family property, maybe they could also use the facilities here.
We just made them making boomerangs and didgeridoos and clapsticks, woomeras,
Yeah.
and have a little shop at the front just selling stuff on the way past. You know?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Touring the vast property, it should be an exciting day. But Isaac's mood is low. His doctor has told him that the number of funerals he's carrying out is affecting his health. Days earlier, a boy he was spending time with through his police liaison work is thought to have killed himself. Isaac's taken it hard.
Just the quietness and the soothing feeling you get when you sit beside the water, you know. And sometimes that's all our kids need, just to sit down and think about life, you know, where they're going. They say, Brother Ike, you're strong, but yeah, I'm strong, but not me.
That's right.
That's my faith that makes me strong.
That's right.
And
We're all weak.
but I get, you know, it hurts me, and I got to have a time where I just sit down and cry, you know, let it all out. But our youth, you know, I don't know how they're coping with it, mate. You know, no one don't want to get out of bed and go to school.
Yeah.
In his office in Sydney, the Aboriginal Social Justice Commissioner says despite all the failed top-down policies of the past, there is space for optimism. Government and corporate players have agreed to fund the Aboriginal Legal Service's new Justice Reinvestment campaign.
Justice reinvestment is an approach basically born in several states in the USA who are actually notorious for locking people up, Texas, Mississippi. They were driven to do other things. There were a whole range of things that were driving these high rates of incarceration. So they started to invest in these diversionary programs, connected with the community, looked at what was causing the over-incarceration.
The result in Texas was a major slowdown in the growth of prison populations. Outback communities like Isaac's are set to get the first taste of the program. It'll be developed and trialled in a town called Burke, just a short drive from Brewarrina.
It's got to be driven by the community. It'll take some time to get the community talking about this, and we've got to start changing the way we do things. It's, you know, the definition of insanity, keep on doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Well, this is the place we chose for the healing centre. There's a nice little mountain and we're going to try and put the buildings around the foot of the mountain so the kids got a bit of a, you know, they can see a bit of beauty when they wake up. Last time I was even caught a goanna, and Dinos was going to eat it.
Even in his darker moments, Isaac's drive to help his people remains.
Like I said to my brother, if we lived on the North Shores of Sydney, it'd be a different story. But out here in the bush, with the forgotten people, and the government doesn't care, they don't care, you know, they really never have cared, you know, but we care, we live here, we love our people, our children. You say to yourself, well, how many more are we going to lose before we have something in place for this youth? But we're on top of the world here, brother. Beautiful place, brother, eh? Beautiful place.
There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar.
The big copper birds coming good for walking.
For the Father waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place. All together, nice and loud. In the sweet by and by, We shall meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. How we shall meet on that beautiful shore.